So the astrology of the week of 7 March 2022 through 13 March 2022, it's a week of settling into this new astrological reality, some new transits that have emerged here with Venus and Mars now in Aquarius after some time. And there's kind of a two-track sky right now with Jupiter ruling several planets and Saturn ruling several planets. And so we're settling into this sort of two-track astrological reality. I think the approach this week becomes more of a poetic kind of engagement with these realities rather than an intellectual one. All right, so let's get into the sky. Let's get into the charts and the transits in the sky. My name's S.J. Anderson. I'm an astrologer, from Texas, based here in Central Europe, and I'm really happy to be here. Welcome to my channel. Glad to be here this week to talk about the astrology, of the week in these very serious, strange, and heavy times. And it's one of those things. I think as for me, seeing some of these configurations last year, knowing this year was probably going to be quite intense, another year of intensity. But it's really strange living through it. I mean, it's like the map and the terrain, this idea that the map is not the terrain. And we have the sky map of 2022. We've had it for our whole lives because we can punch it up in the ephemeris. But now we're in it. We're having to traverse this terrain that we had only seen previously on the map. And it's a whole different experience. The kind of tangible, lived experience of life is something that it's like 4D or 5D or full in living color, that phrase, as opposed to just a sketch of something or something only in the mind. And, I think this is where I just want to say this at the outset. It comes up almost in every reading. My favorite phrase, throw out the astrology. What tools do we have? What tools do we have to function, to survive when we're in the terrain? You know what I'm saying? And so if you think about a camping trip, you can pack your supplies, you can read about what supplies you need, you can know where the campsite is, you can have the directions to get out to the campsite. But once you're camping, you're gonna have to brave, uncomfortable ground. Even with like a little pad, it's still uncomfortable. The sleeping bag isn't perfect. The food sucks. The bathroom facilities are, what's the term I'm looking for? There's just, they're just kind of fundamental, let's say, if you're going outside or, so there's no way to understand what that's like except to go live it. And then you get good and then you practice and then you can do it. But even so, I've been camping a lot. I've been outside a lot. It's still uncomfortable every time. It's an adjustment and I don't like it and it's hard. So this point I just wanted to make here at the outset. I think it's a good introduction to what's happening right now in the astrology, which is we have two stelliums. And this week we'll have these two stelliums that emerge when Mercury enters Pisces, the only aspect this week, the only change this week. And you'll have three planets in Saturn, ruled by Aquarius now, Venus, Mars, and Saturn in Aquarius. And then you'll have three planets in Pisces, the Sun, Jupiter, and Mercury. And these are signs that are in aversion to each other. They don't make an aspect. And so there really is this kind of two-track situation or sense of being. And one of my favorite things, I had this geography teacher when I was in middle school, and he used to always say it's like two ships passing in the night. And you don't see the other ship. But these two ships are passing in the night. And that might be what's happening here. And we think about Pisces, the expansive kind of release of Pisces. It can be tumultuous, there can be turmoil. It's a sign of the inner realm or the inner state because it is of the night sect, it's the water sign, emotions, water equals emotions is kind of a major keyword there for water signs. But it's our inner realities. And then Jupiter is there overseeing these kind of upheavals and this tumult maybe in the inner reality as we search for truth and grapple for truth. And then the other thing that's happening, and maybe there's a disconnect, is the boots on the ground reality of the material form. Saturn in the air sign, the day sign, right? The outer active day sign. Now we're thinking about the outer world and the structures or limitations in the outer world as it may relate to just what we're experiencing. And I'm thinking now with the situation we're in, there is a lot of questions about tangible materiality emerging, let alone for people that are directly affected by turmoil in the world right now, but also the economic shocks and upheavals and all of that. And so, this is just what I want to think about this week is how are we processing these inner upheavals, but yet still focusing on these practical, tangible concerns of Aquarius. And that's just something to consider. The other thing I just say, this is tough stuff. The world is, insane right now. It's really a strange and difficult world to be operating in. So to be speaking about a topic like astrology, without having the context and at least speaking somewhat or alluding somewhat to the world situation, it's just not possible. And so there's this great task of being elegant and being respectful and kind of this dance of how to bring the astrology into the moment. I think we're fortunate with astrology, unlike some other areas that are popular, in that astrology has a whole history of speaking to global crisis. I mean, it actually emerges to do exactly that. So we're not completely out of the comfort zone of astrology to engage things like a calamitous world of upheaval. Other hobbies on YouTube, I like other stuff, and I see these YouTubers giving disclaimers like, oh, my channel is just for fun, and then they're acknowledging the global events. At least with astrology, this is part of our wheelhouse, you might say. But it's still tough to talk about, and we still have to kind of acknowledge it directly and just admit that I'm doing the best I can. I just want to bring, the best I'm able to do in terms of the astrological, symbolic understanding of reality in these times, in these great times. So I don't really have much more to say. I think that's a pretty good introduction about this week. The main thing is these two stelliums now in Pisces and Aquarius. It really does. We've been adding to Pisces. First it was Jupiter, then it was the Sun, now it's Mercury, and now it's very strong, the Pisces-Jupiter kind of mismatch or interrelationship. So let's just go here. I'm going to slip here to the first slide. Excuse me. You've got Mercury entering Pisces, the only thing going on this week. This happens at 2:30 a.m. in Central Europe on the 10th, which would be on Thursday, very early here in the morning in Central Europe. We get this shift of Mercury into Pisces, and it's a big deal. I'm going to talk about it in the chart, so I'll save some of it. But remember, in Aquarius, Mercury has triplicity rulership. It's an air sign. Mercury is very comfortable there. It's a more tactical, technical, and analytical way of communication in Aquarius. And so we end that this week, and then we get this kind of poetic, almost nonsensical, untangible, intangible, symbolic way of processing truth. And I think that's going to help us tremendously, because I think that's really honest. I think that's what we need right now. I think social media, so much news coming through social media. When the crisis begins, when any crisis begins, it's like checking those feeds. What's the latest? What's the latest? Feed my mind with truth and reality. Feed my mind with truth and reality. I think we've crossed a threshold where there's a certain sense of releasing into the uncontrollable, releasing into the nature of being. This kind of, you might say, a field of being that is a collective field of the human being. We almost need this now to assert itself, to save us, right? To save the collective. When you have such serious things being discussed as, the mutually assured destruction of global superpowers, what else can you do except appeal to these higher forces that we pray will come and kind of hold us and kind of have mercy on humanity as we do the folly of humanity, what humans do, the follies we make, the kind of bellicose bloodlust of the human species. We need a divine intervention, I think. And I think this Mercury into Pisces is a way where we can now maybe communicate a little bit more freely spiritually. We can, speaking in tongues, I think of here. I met some friends this year where I am. There were missionaries we had whole conversations about speaking in tongues. It's just a way to release into forms of connection that maybe aren't as strictly understandable, or the rules of how we understand things don't apply anymore. And we can release into these ways of connecting that maybe aren't is easily understood. And I think we need it. It's perfect for prayer. I mean, prayer is a Mercury and Pisces phenomenon. I don't know if you've ever been around preachers. And I'm not talking about like mega churches, or even maybe preachers is the wrong word, but just religious people. When they pray sometimes, there's a real difference. Like I grew up in a home where, you know, my grandfather would always say grace. It was these kind of rehearsed prayers. They were Catholic. And so, you know, it's the rosary. That's a beautiful practice, like the mala beat, the mala japa is what they say in the Vedic tradition. That's the mantras on the mala. But the Catholics have their own version of it on the rosary. So, but that's rote, and it's these predetermined prayers. But sometimes when you go to like maybe a Protestant or non-denominational, where I came from homes, the prayers can become very much people speak directly from the heart, and it's just not rehearsed, and it's this unknown opening where people just kind of, in a very heartfelt way, reach out to a God of their understanding. And that's what I think Mercury Pisces can be, because there's no rules here now. And I encourage people, and I've done it a lot in my life, and I've heard people successfully doing it. I mean, just get down and start talking to whatever you think is out there that's a beneficial power. Help, we need your help, please, help humanity. I've actually honestly been doing that some this week, because there was no other solution. You know, the news isn't going to fix this situation, and the news is not getting good. It's not improving. And so the only thing I knew how to do was to try to connect and appeal to these other forces. And I think this transit of Mercury crossing over will be very useful for that. Now, what do I have here? This week brings opportunities for adjustments into the new transiting realities. Mercury's out of Capricorn after 4 months, Mars after 6 weeks. That's a huge shift. And this is the first full week of Mars and Mercury out of that Capricorn part of our chart. Capricorn was those degrees that were so activated in 2020 when this first part of the upheaval of this decade hit, in early 2020. All of those degrees were activated recently with Mars, Venus, and Pluto there. Mercury was there too. And now that's over. And now we're into the degrees that have been activated later at the end of 2020 and into 2021. And so it's this idea in the Saturn the domiciles of Saturn. You have Capricorn, which is maybe a inner, again, it's a night sex sign, a localized kind of processing of what already exists. But now we've traversed into some kind of new structuring. And I'm hopeful. I just want to say this here. I wanted to say this in the introduction, but watch Venus as it relates to these world events, because the Venus retrogrades in 2014 in Capricorn and then in 2021, 22 in Capricorn have timed the military events that happened in that exact place in the world there. That was timed by Venus. But Venus, while it's in Aquarius here for the next month, it's going to have a very special condition called enclosure between Mars and Saturn. And so Venus is going to stay under pressure, but when Venus comes into Pisces on the 5th of April, that's when I really feel like we're going to be able to release out of some of this chaotic intensity. And so I'm just praying for peace, and I'm hoping that the military phase of whatever's happening can settle in. It can be more of a diplomatic, something more diplomatic. But I'm looking for 5 April, that Venus ingress into Pisces, and then earlier than that, Venus will leave its conjunction with Saturn, and that besiegement is over. That enclosure is over, the malefic enclosure. So, and that's in the end of March that happens, and then it's 5 April when Venus enters Pisces. So just a little bit of a point there. We're in this week, and until April, we're in this period where both Venus and Mars are now in Aquarius, and I think there will be a new phase of what was began. And setting aside world events, I mean, even in our lives, it's like the processing of a Venus retrograde, the delays and blocks of a Venus retrograde. Now that shifts, still ruled by Saturn. So still may be restrictive in some ways, but there might be more active processes that we can implement this week. And I said that in last week's video. I talked some about that, so I won't say much more. But there's very much a newness here. We're not quite there with Saturn still dominating Mars and Venus, and it's still a dominating factor. And that's the other thing to say. Wait until April, late April, mid-April. Mars leaves Aquarius. There's nothing else. Saturn will not rule a traditional planet, for a long, long time, other than the moon's monthly transit through Capricorn, Aquarius. But we're about to have a lot, Saturn very strong in Aquarius still, but not given any responsibility there in Aquarius over other traditional planets. And so it's this final period of Saturn in Aquarius for about another year, actually. It's almost exactly a year from now that Saturn leaves Aquarius for good, where Saturn is not going to be tasked for much of that year with any responsibility. Now the inner planets will come through there, Venus, Mercury, the Sun, next winter, and they will have, Saturn will rule them. But it's nothing like this year when you had, and last year, Jupiter, Mars, and there was a lot more planets in 2021, 2022 that were ruled by Saturn. That's not the case anymore. So I'm optimistic that that can help us too. You know, Saturn brings tough lessons, and certainly we've gone through many tough lessons. We're beginning to have that, this week. Mercury leaves Aquarius. April, Venus, Mars leave Aquarius into Pisces. And it's going to feel good, I think. And hopefully we'll learn some lessons here. Okay, let me come back. So the division between Jupiter and Saturn as the two final dispositors is I talked about this already with the 3 in Pisces and 3 in Aquarius. And I want to add here that the 2 great planets make no aspect. And these are the great planets. We have a dispositor tree with Jupiter and Saturn, the 2 great planets. Great, I think about great as meaning great power. They actually engage very serious matters. The kind of bigger questions of life are engaged by Jupiter and Saturn. These are the great planets, and they are now dominating and competing. And it's a very serious week for this reason, in a very serious moment. And what do I have here? Truth, wisdom, release from freedom track. That's Jupiter, the releasing from freedom and the truth and wisdom. And then the fixity of the kind of cold, hard constraints of Saturn. And we're having to kind of battle, and sometimes we may be able to lean into Jupiter more, and then sometimes we may be able to lean into Saturn. And like I said, for me this week, it was just the release that came for me was like, all right, I'm just going to get on my knees and pray, because that's all I can really do. Please intervene. And sincere, heartfelt. There was intensity. And by the way, I want to thank people that emailed me after my video last week or messaged me. Appreciate you reaching out to me. Yeah, I have been a little just concerned. I mean, I think we all have been about what the headlines. And so I'm trying to bring that into the videos. And I just appreciate your messages. I'm doing well, doing okay. Coping okay, I think. I like to work, so I just work a lot and, try to pray when I need to. But yeah, this week there was moments where I was like, all right, this is the solution for me, is to pray and ask for divine intervention. All right, let's come back here. And that was part of the 2 track is the point. It was like the constriction, and then I reverted to the very Piscean side of Jupiter and Pisces. We had that Cazimi, we had the new moon there. And that's how it manifested for me. And Jupiter signifies spiritual connection, wisdom traditions of all kinds. Pisces is a sign of the mutability that comes through prayer. We try to change ourselves by changing my insides, by reaching out to these other forces, or meditation, or any contemplative practice. There's a sense of wanting to change the insides or work with the insides as they're changing as a way to kind of cope or grasp with those internal states. It's very much Jupiter in Pisces. So, all right, let's move on. Let's see what the moon is up to this week. The moon is now still in that waxing phase. I have here opportunities for adjustments into the new transiting realities. Just what I've said. Venus is out of Capricorn. Mars is out of Capricorn. So I was writing this, and I actually copied this and put it on the other slide. But here we go. We're not quite there with Saturn still very much dominating factor. So Taurus moon is squared by Mars, and we just walked through it now. Mars and Saturn are in Aquarius. So these Taurus moons are under even more pressure, and the node is there. These fixed signs right now over the next 6 weeks it's kind of in some ways max fixed sign pressure with both Saturn and Mars in Aquarius, while that north node and south node are in Taurus Scorpio. So I'm just, I'm thinking that there is, always when the moon is exalted, there can be opportunities to have Venusian things and relate to our bodies and our homes and our selfhood and our kind of more material experience around safety and comfort, relate to those with beauty and truth and wisdom and, connection and pleasures. that's always going to be present with that moon in Taurus, but with the squares of Mars and Saturn, and then that North Node. The North Node brings what may be it's not going to go as smoothly. There may be kind of stops and starts or interjections of a certain type, eclipse type energy with the moon. And then you have Mars and Saturn with this overcoming square, dynamically active. And actually, I should just talk about this a little bit here. Mars and Saturn co-present is heavy duty. It is a big deal. The force and the short-term impulse nature of Mars to break through things, combined with the overarching kind of deep structure that can be harsh of Saturn. And when they join, it's like these breakages that can happen to longer lasting structure. And they're combining here to really assert the kind of Aquarian side of Saturn. Saturn now has Mars's power. And that's what I think we're seeing in the world this week. I think with Mars in Aquarius this month, we're going to continue to see these kind of new geopolitical realities emerge that are of a very serious Saturnine nature. I was tweeting this week about the gas prices and wheat prices skyrocketing. It's going to affect me where I am. The country where I am, they import wheat here 50% from Russia. So I think they're going to try to source supplies from other places, but those wheat costs could really go up. It's all over the world. I'm seeing like screenshots on Twitter or images from LA with like $5 a gallon gas. Unheard of. I've never seen that in my life, So this is part of, I think, a Mars-Saturn. It's going to get faster now and kind of more chaotic potentially with Mars coming into Saturn in Aquarius. But this Taurus moon, my point is this Taurus moon now has to conform with that, confront that. And it may jostle our ability to have the settled Venusian moon that this moon loves usually in Taurus. So after that, we start the week with that. We're actually, I think, there right now as I record this. But then we have 8 March. And that's going to be Tuesday at 8 p.m. Central Europe, 1939. We'll have that moon enter Gemini. The Mercury will still be in Aquarius for the first part of this Gemini moon, and it's nice to have that little swan song, the kind of technical side, the precision powers of Mercury in Aquarius. We may be able to get some of that here, that final touch here of that. And then I think we'll feel Mercury's ingress into Pisces because the moon will be in Gemini during that time. And so it will be quite interesting. I wonder if you're a poet out there or if you're a writer, free writing or poetry, this might be a good time right on that ingress of Mercury to just get into your rough draft space, or you just kind of let those words come out onto the page. And that will last until here we go, 11 March, which is Friday, 8 in the morning here in Central Europe, 8:24. You will have the moon coming into Cancer. And I really like this Cancer moon because the moon in Cancer strong. We'll look at this chart. It's going to be my transit of the week, but I think this will be a sense of coming home into this newness that we've described with Mars and Venus, and settling into this newness a little bit. That's why I love Cancer moons, because there's always a time to settle into those new transits. Every time the moon comes into Cancer. And this one's particularly good because it's safe from the difficult planets. It's a waxing moon. And so I think this would be a good opportunity to settle into some new home life, home structure, the home in the body, the home just in our own consciousness. And then we have the moon in Leo right here on the weekend, right at the end of the week. And that will kick off now another fixed opposition with Mars and Saturn, that Leo moon and that Taurus moon. So the beginning and ending of this week, and then next week, the beginning and the ending, you're getting these fixed moons activating Mars and Saturn and Venus. Watch out for those 6 moons. Just be aware of them. Know that if you're having some roughness during, like, this would be Sunday at 8 p.m., so into Monday next week, or now this Monday, you're dealing with a fixed moon that's being heavily dynamically activated by Mars and Saturn, like I was just speaking about. That's sometimes how I like to deal with difficult transits when I see them coming up. It's just, okay, I'm aware of them. Just being aware that the transit is difficult helps me process the reality and not be taken aback, when things are challenged. It can help to know, all right, man, I'm drained, I'm run down. Yeah, there's that transit. Okay, that makes sense. Well, it helps as a processing tool to alleviate the idea of, that I'm something's wrong with me or something like this. Now I've got plenty wrong with me, but I'm working to improve myself always, but there's kind of another contributing factor, right? And then we know it's going to end. And that's the beautiful thing about like this Taurus moon ends on Tuesday, 7:30, 1939. Good to know that that's going to end. Okay, so let's go now. I want to shift to my two charts, my transits of the week here. Actually, the first chart is going to be the 10 March chart. Thursday, 2:30 in the morning in Central Europe, Mercury enters Pisces. It joins Jupiter, Neptune, and the Sun. And so you actually have 4 planets there if you include Neptune, but 3 traditional planets are now in Pisces. And I have here, there's an attempt to articulate the inarticulable, which can be freeing. You know, it's freeing, like if someone says, tell me about it, and you're confused, tell me, try. I'm learning a new language right now, and there's times when I'm with my tutor or talking to the people around me, and I just throw out words. Just try. They're wrong, they don't make sense. I get laughed at sometimes, but then people are kind, they'll help and correct me. But it can kind of be freeing to give myself permission to make those linguistic mistakes and just, you know, try out the new words I'm learning and that I think is a part of Mercury and Pisces as well, is trying to articulate, knowing that we may miss the mark, but the energy is still there. What we desire to say is what's important. Then how it comes out is going to be reflected. How we did what our motivation is will be reflected in the attempt. And so that's, I think, something to do here, an attempt to articulate the inarticulable, which can be freeing. And think about the shock of the last just 3 weeks. If we just, I mean, this latest geopolitical crisis is held in a bigger crisis of over 2.5 years. I was tweeting about, you know, the fact that astrologers are now practicing in this kind of heightened global tension with superpowers, and someone quote tweeted me and said, well, also we had the health crisis since 2020, and we're also working under that context. And they're very much right that we've been these kind of crisis astrology for a long time now. But just the last 2 weeks, the shock comes, and then like checking news, what's going to happen. This week with Mercury entering Pisces, this chart here on Thursday, I think it's a good time to start trying to talk about what we're going through. It's hard to do that, to give ourselves space for that when the intensity is there and it's like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy and new. Maybe we can come down a little bit with Mercury coming into Pisces and just say, all right, what am I feeling? I know I need to do that. What do I feel? What am I feeling right now? Just try to touch and get in touch with myself by asking, what do I want to say? What do I want to share? It helps that I make videos every week because I get to do some, and I tweet a lot, so I'm doing that a lot. But even there's always deeper levels of that, you know. And then I have here the first 2 Pisces stelliums this spring. There was something else I wanted to share here about this. Oh, I think you know, prayer, the spiritual side that I was alluding to earlier. Mercury is a planet of the communication of the gods. Esoteric practices of all kinds are found with Mercury. Mercury in Pisces, Pisces being the ruled by Jupiter, the greater benefic, which itself is a planet of religious or spiritual tradition, wisdom tradition. These combinations with Jupiter here in Pisces, now Mercury joining, I think there's a great opportunity to do that, to connect with the unseen, to connect with the powers that be, so-called, through just what I was saying earlier, the examples about prayer, but whatever you do, I mean, you can write, do magical stuff of all kinds, but you know, I think this is a really great transit right now to allow for those openings, and we need it because we're gonna need that spiritual urgency and that spiritual kind of potency to cope with Mars, Saturn, and Venus in Aquarius. And so in a way, the aversion is a great opportunity because, we can rest and develop a spiritual practice right now as we're managing and processing this other stuff. And I like it because I want to bring some of my mercurial side into kind of news sources. It's hard, but I'm trying to get out of the news. So, okay, let's come back to the first of 2 Pisces stelliums this spring. So you'll have Jupiter, the Sun, and Mercury, and then you'll have Venus, Mars, and Jupiter of the traditionals. And so we're going to have 2 Pisces stelliums. This is the first one. You have Sun and Mercury the consciousness, the communication powers, the esoteric practices with Jupiter, truth and wisdom. Then we'll have the Mercury, the Mars, Venus, which is more relational and connective with Jupiter. And I am excited because when that second stellium comes, we're going to have Aries activation, fire in the sky finally. We've not had anything in a fire sign since Mars was in Sagittarius in early January. We're going to get that fire sign activation when the sun hits Aries on the 20th. But that second stellium with Pisces, we've now shifted over, and that might be even more dynamically kind of moving forward with this year with some fire energy. The sun will be out. So I'm looking forward to that second stellium too, but to get through the rest of this winter, this stellium with Mercury and the sun and Jupiter and Pisces, I think it's very key for these internal states of truth and wisdom, searching for those things through things like prayer and connection with these higher forces. Okay, now let me go to my second chart. This is the transit of the week. This is the Cancer moon. And yeah, I just love it. You know, I almost went with a moment here in Gemini. I was thinking about this. There's some degrees here in the middle of Gemini when you will have, you know, separating from Venus, applying to Jupiter, that moon, the benefic enclosure in Gemini. It's just a very short moment. And part of why I was a little hesitant, I think that there is some of that that Mercury into Pisces, you know, technically in terms of technical astrology, you don't want that moon ruled by Mercury and Pisces, and then also Mercury in that anaretic degree of Aquarius. I don't know. I just felt, you know, the reason why is that I want some home energy, and the other thing about the Cancer moon is that look at this, it's trining Jupiter, so you get this another opportunity. This spring and this late winter spring, this first part of 2022, where you have the Cancer moons applying to Jupiter while Jupiter's in Pisces. Jupiter's only going to be in Pisces for about 2 months. That's it. And then in 6 weeks at the end of the year. And so I think this is an opportunity that doesn't come around very often, where you have the moon in Cancer overcome by a Jupiter in Pisces, a trine from Jupiter in Pisces, getting to apply to it with Mars and Saturn averse to the moon, the nodes, easy aspects to the moon. So this is a special opportunity that's a lot more rare than, let's say, a Gemini moon with Mercury and Aquarius. We're going to get that a lot. Every year we get that. So I went ahead and went with this. Finding safety and comfort in these times, making a deliberate effort to do so. And that's what I wanted to focus on here with the moon in Cancer. It's a cardinal sign, remember, a sign of initiation, Cancer. Making the deliberate effort. I found I had to do this last week. I was like, this is just too toxic right now. Whether it's the world, whether it's the media about the world, whatever it is, it's just too toxic for me. And I had to say, all right, I'm going to choose to like take some extra time to step out of it. And where do I need to feel safe emotionally? You know, and I've got friends, people emailing me from all over the world, like people want to talk about the latest headlines, and it's just like, I need some other safety and comfort. And so that's what I feel like here is having that deliberate effort, you know, taking the time to take a bath. And that's the other thing I have here, safety and comfort in the unknown, if possible. I want to come back to that point, but water as a coping tool, meditative bathing. And I don't have a bathtub here, but boy, I wish I did. I would just lay in that puppy and just lay in it, put the bath salts, the special powders, and just lay in that thing. Magnesium, Epsom salts. But I have some nice showers where I live, and I can just like get in that warm water and just kind of let it. It's a break from everything. Being in the tub or being in the shower. Hopefully you don't have your phone there. You won't drop it in, but it can be a break from all of this stuff. And so that's what I think here. These are two water signs, Jupiter and the moon, both in water signs in Pisces and Cancer respectively. So how can we use water? Even drinking water, having water around us to drink, that's very comfortable. That can be comforting. And so then the last thing here, just safety and comfort in the unknown. And I want to speak about this. I talked about it a lot last week, but it's unknown right now, isn't it? Day to day, the news is changing. We've entered in like some economic stuff that's never happened before. I just saw commodities indexes in America are record highs since they've been keeping records. That's the prices of goods of the commodities, so like oil, gas, corn, wheat, all of that stuff. Record highs. And so we're already in unknowns. Every moment is an unknown, really. But I think there's some unprecedented things that are unfolding now, and that's going to keep unfolding in this way over the next month to rest of the year, rest of the next couple of years. So how can we're going to be forced, let me put it this way, to find safety and comfort in the unknown. We're going to be forced to do that. And this transit, Saturday, the one I picked out here is Saturday, it's very close in its application in this chart where I am. 5 Central Europe here, the Balkans. Very close, I think in Germany, and as you get into Western Europe, you can find this chart. The moon may be a little, it may be a little bit later. So you'd have to find the chart you need. In America, it could be a little bit of a different chart. But just try to look for that moon in like the 10th house or the 11th house and applying Jupiter. And this is what I think can be good for, it's the unknown. We're going to have to confront the unknown. Jupiter in Pisces, the Piscean is an unknown. Storms are unknown. The great storms of Pisces that are a huge part of the moment right now, it's unknown. A hurricane will be unknown. I mean, where I was in Texas, in Houston, was flooded by hurricanes. There's people right now, refugees, total unknown. And so these storms can change our reality, and we have to then be safe, knowing I have no idea what's going to happen moment to moment. But in this moment, right here, right now, my breath is okay, and I'm just going to feel some safety in this exact moment. And then we can step into each moment, one after one after one, collectively, day by day by day by day, until this crisis dissipates. And I think it will. I'm just going to stay optimistic that we're going to see resolution at some point soon, and we can begin to heal. So, all right, I'm going to stop there. That's the weekly astrology. Let's pull a card. Just bring a card into this, and let's see what we have here with this card. So we've got the looks like it's the 8 of Spades. Let me pull this up here. I think it's the moon in Aquarius. That's what the 8 of Spades is. Censure, I think is what the card is. Let me see here. Where is that folder? Okay, but yeah, it's the moon in Aquarius, 8 of Spades. So we're already getting into Aquarian energy when we talk about the 8 of Spades. Here it is, yeah, censure. So no, sorry, it's we moved out. In this system, the decans, it's 2, 3, 4 is the cardinal sign of the element. So cardinal air is the 2 of Spades, 3 of Spades, 4 of Spades. Fixed air, 5 of Spades, 6 of Spades, 7 of Spades. And then mutable air, 8 of Spades, 9 of Spades, 10 of Spades. So this is the first decan of mutable air. It's that first decan of Gemini. Censure, Jupiter in Gemini. What is a censure? That is when we've said something, and then maybe a ruling body will say that, give us a kind of punishment or a kind of warning label for maybe misbehavior. And I have it here. I like that because Jupiter, as it gets kind of too wild, if we lose sight of the Jupiter, of maybe the rules or the appropriateness, and we let Jupiter run too free here and in this immutable air sign, we might say things that we regret. We might say things that we shouldn't say. We might get too fanatical. Actually, Jupiter in Gemini, I think that's a big risk. Remember the axis here. It's the day mutable axis. Sagittarius, Gemini, the outward focus mutability. It can bring fanaticism. And I think what this card is warning about is trying to... The world has been bifurcated, hasn't it, into these belief systems. That you're either for or against. It's either good or bad. And I think in a moment of crisis, and really in 2020 it began, and now there's going to be a heightened kind of energy and a pull into this kind of yes-no thinking of and I think this card is warning us this week to be careful when you speak. And you got to understand, I understand people have different beliefs about the world. People I love have different beliefs about the world. Colleagues and friends I care about have different beliefs about the world than me. And I love them anyway. Period. I love them anyway. And I've got to be respectful I want to love people, but I want to be careful about how I speak and what I say. And I think this is the card that's kind of warning us. Like, let's just be careful right now in a world where there's misinformation, to use that term. I've seen it on Twitter. It's like there's so much being removed and banned. And where is the reality? What's the real news? I don't even know. I don't even know. And so I think we have to speak carefully and slowly and deliberately about the world right now, and this card is where I'm focused on. Now, it does point to a transit this week with the moon in Gemini when Mercury traverses into Pisces where Jupiter is. So maybe there's something here also about communication with Mercury coming into Pisces, how this week and later in the week, this is Wednesday, remember, it's Tuesday, Wednesday, the moon comes in Tuesday into Gemini at 19:36, I think it was, and then Mercury into Pisces on Wednesday. Was it 2:30 in the morning? So I think this is, again, how we communicate about truth, how we communicate about wisdom, how we can bring our acceptance of other people's communications and maybe the errors they make. People can make errors. In a moment of intensity, things can be moving so fast. That's the Gemini, propelled by Jupiter. And people might say things or do things that they regret or that they didn't intend based on bad information, and so I just think we need to love and respect and heal and help others in terms of accepting others as we're all making our mistakes, and being careful, maybe, just like I said, with our own speech around this particular moment. So I'm going to leave that there. That card's interesting to me to see it. It's kind of feel like a little bit of a warning about our words and our beliefs right now. So I think it's appropriate. I think it's perfect. And remember the poetic Mercury in Pisces, where it's nonsensical ways of connection. I think that's a strategy here to mitigate the risk here, is to get into things that don't make sense as a way to understand. Think about surrealist art. Think about, you look at like a Poetic, it's like, what the hell is that? And then you stay with it and you see it, and it can just draw you in. My favorite wing of the museum I used to go to a lot in Austin, the Blanton Museum of Art, right on the University of Texas campus, it was always the non-representational abstract expressionism. That's what I love the most, because you would walk in and see a canvas like the Rothkos. It's like black and red or white or whatever, just like 3 squares. And I feel like when we represent reality in that way, it can hit the emotions faster. It's like, wow, just a red canvas? Or with Rothko, he's famous in the Rothko Chapel in Houston, it's just shades of black. But you walk in and you instantly know what this is about. Grief, sadness, loss, death. Those are the themes. And it's a chapel, right? So it's the spiritual nature of those themes. And we're brought instantly into that when we see those canvases. And so that may be a way with Mercury and Pisces. Remember, Venus is exalted in Pisces, the planet of art, visual arts. And so Mercury, maybe there's something here to tap into these non-representational, abstract, expressionist ways of coping. Excuse me. Okay, so I'll leave it there. That's the weekly astrology. That's the weekly tarot. Thank you very much for being here. I'm very just happy to be here. And, just have a wonderful week out there. Go easy on yourself and go easy on others. And, pray if you can. I don't want to tell people ever how they want to engage their spiritual life. So if you don't like prayer, just let that go. But whatever you can do, I think, to open the heart a little bit and try to have a little bit more of a soft sort of way this week as we emerge into another dynamic week and another dynamic period. So peace to you. Talk very, very soon.